What is up, motherfuckers? It is the road to 100k a month, episode 16. And we're back, bro. We're back with another video. It is just got out of the shower. It is 26th of July, 2026. And a profitable week, a good week. A lot of good lessons, even away from the charts that I'll go over. Really good trades, really good setups. But I think we had opportunities where we could have done better. But nevertheless, we will be going over all of our reflections, everything that we went over this week. With you all today. I think it could be a little bit of a shorter episode today, but let's fucking rip. As far as that, my intention. So, as I mentioned on the last episode, I'll be going into every new week with a new intention. And this week's intention was, after watching Fight Club for the third time in a row, was embody, not emulate, not aspire, embody. Word for word. And the reason I did that was I found that I wanted to. When I look at like Tyler Durden from Fight Club, it's a very amplified version of a personality, and I think in the quest for me, as I'm reading the overview that I always talk about to you guys, I think I just need to embody that version of myself to a higher degree. So I think reflecting on it, I could have done that a little bit better this week, but nevertheless, we kept it pushing, bro. But as far as the trades going into Monday, let's get straight into this bitch. Or actually no, the P&L. So I'll put up the P&L of the week. So like I said, pretty green week. I feel like we could have done better, but it is what it is. That's the P&L. And then the account balances. So I'll put up a screenshot from like TradeSyncer. You guys can see all the account balances and that they're funded, not fucking evals. Right, Monday. So bias. High time frame mixed between bearish and bullish on the 1 hour and the 4 hour. We respected the 4 hour gap and rejected. Gonna stay open-minded, good draws of liquidity to both sides. Let's see. And we ended up being more of a bullish setup. So we broke past the 4 hour gap at the open. We pulled back past the 50-minute BPR. We swept Asia and London high. We pulled back deeper into the 1 hour gap and we inversed on the 32nd. We entered that bitch. 4 contracts. Thoughts break even was just under the 50-minute BPR. TP market open. TP was at the market open relative high. Good detachment plus patience despite long waiting. Recap. So this is a really interesting one. So the recap, partial was at break even solely due to the oversized. So I accidentally oversized. So I had the break even a little bit lower. And then the lesson learned for the longer trade, lesson learned that for the longer a trade goes, start taking more contracts. So this is a lesson I took away. Because of my pullback model, that's pretty much a variation of the IFEG model. I've realized that the longer the trade goes, the lower the probability happens of it being hit, right? Because the way I look at an IFEG model, or again, my pullback model, it's a momentum sort of trade. And if momentum starts slowing down, I looked at it as like the lower it takes to get your TP or make the moves, just exit contract. So the lesson I took away from that is the longer the trade happens, slowly but surely start taking contracts out. So in that case, I had 4 contracts, start taking 1 contract, 2 contracts, 3 contracts. Funny enough, the second I had that thought, it just dumped into my break even. But it is what it is. And then the recap, I'm also going to put up a recap. Shorts could have been the play here. I'm going to attach the screenshot of what it was. The only reason I didn't was like open-minded to the short, and I really didn't even spot it, to be honest, was that we had a mixed high time frame and we had a rejection out of the 4 hour gap. So intuitively felt longs were the likelier of the two. But I put it in the circle there, that would have been the entry. You could have probably found an IFEG there and took a short there into like the 1 hour gap. That could have been a really good trade, to be honest, or that 1 hour, that 1 hour gap. But either way, we took the long, is what it is. Post-session, we wrapped it up there. Very abundant mindset, didn't need to trade, knowing big moves were coming. So a huge thing of a huge reflection from this week alone, I did not size that much on my trades. I could have sized a lot more. The reason I didn't is that I'm starting to, and I want to get used to, taking trades on 10 accounts. I feel like there's been a little bit of a psychological difference from trading from 5 to 10, that I feel like there's higher stakes, and I need to train my brain into thinking, no, it isn't. And that this is just the beginning, because we're going to get to 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, who knows, until they ban my ass. But we need to make sure and condition our brain into taking the wins, taking the trades, feeling comfortable, So I de-risked this week. This is just a whole week what I've done, with the intention of getting the reps in with the model, which I'm still getting reps in. It's still only been like 2-3 weeks since I've fully embraced it. And slowly, but knowing that soon enough we're going to be sizing big, and that taking losses, like not taking losses, but not taking the biggest wins, hitting break evens, not having the highest P&L, it doesn't really matter. What matters is what was the outcome, and just knowing that slowly but surely I'm going to be able to size way bigger as time goes by, and that's when I'm going to reap my rewards. So for the first time, I think in my journey, I really had an abundant mindset where I wasn't phased about the sizing. I wasn't phased about the profit target, because I just had this, I don't want to say delusional belief, but just a certain belief of like, bro, it's just a matter of time until things start ramping up, and size is just going to be more on the table. So that was the 5 minute there, and that wrapped up Monday. Tuesday, actually, bro, this is actually a really interesting one. I watched the Tape Pod, bro. For those that don't know, bro, when I say the Tape Pod, the podcast that he had pre-recorded before he got arrested in Miami. Generally, I think I've mentioned this a couple of times of like lessons I've learned from him. That motherfucker literally changed my life, bro. I think most of the people watching this would be in my demographic and in my age group or similar to me. So I would think a lot of you think the same way, but bro, that hurt my soul, bro. I watched that podcast as well. Genuinely, a couple of reflections I took away from that. Master communicator, what a storyteller, what a story, and genuinely an inspiration for me, bro. Like, I don't care what anybody says, bro. That motherfucker changed my life, bro. If it wasn't for that guy, bro, I would not be making this video. I would not want to be a trader. I wouldn't want to be making money. I wouldn't want to be improving myself. I wouldn't be waking up thinking, how the fuck can I make progress? I'd probably be a bum in some fucking college dorm and fucking hungover from last night, bro. Like, that's who I'd be, bro. So I genuinely owe everything to that guy. For like unlocking that mindset, and I'm sure for a lot of you watching this, the same. But let's see how that shit pans out, bro. Hopefully shit's good, bro. But the bias, we had a new 4-hour gap formed, plus a 1 hour, not using the 4 hour, and instead using the 1 hour because it was the more respected zone. High time frame, once again, not saying much with conviction. Would be looking to see how we react off the 4 hour above and the current 1 hour, and look for a follow-throughs with a clear trend. We had draws of liquidity, again, to both sides. First trade, I think, was bullish. We failed to sweep the previous New York high at the open. We tagged into the 1 hour gap. We reversed out of it. After some chop, we finally inversed both the 30-second and the 1 minute. We entered. We had 2 contracts, 15-point stop, and thoughts. Follow the if-then statement. So one thing I did, I was watching a podcast from the Titans of Tomorrow, as I shouted out the other day. And one of the traders said one thing he does when he looks for setups is he adds if-then statements. I think his name is like Desi or something. But it's like you add an if-then statement. So for example, if we go into the 1 hour gap and we get an inversion, I will enter. And when it adds in it, it gives you clarity within the trade, and it doesn't let your psychology kind of get loose. Because it's a simple if-then statement. It's like, you've said it. If this happens, then that happens. And so in then, I followed that statement in my head, and I was like, if we tagged into the 1 hour gap and we inversed the 1 minute and the 30-second, I will enter. And so I waited and waited and waited until we got that inversion. Once we got that inversion, I entered. And so that was a good lesson, and a good tip for you guys to use is use that in your brain, if-then statements. And so that's what I did. And so we inversed out of the 1 hour. We trailed the stop for the second contract. Recap was with 2 contracts. I should have just executed both contracts at the TP level. I think I mentioned this on either the last episode or the other. I said, the way I'm going to be trailing my take profits and my contracts when I'm in a trade is 70% of my position gets closed at my first significant level. And then the 30% we can just let that bitch ride. But with 2 contracts, it's just not enough, bro. I mean, you might as well just take all of it. So might as well exit. And then again, psychologically, I thought a 1-to-1 risk to reward might have not been enough. Should have just took the base hit if entering with less contracts. So that was a $100 win across 10 accounts. But that's again another thing I need to condition my mind to, and still, maybe it's that sense of greed, but like a 1-to-1, I still felt like it's not enough. But then again, it's like, bro, would you go to a casino if you had a set amount of money and you doubled that shit? You would, bro. And so I kind of also need to condition my mind into like, ideally the best setup is always to have a high risk to reward. But if the position is a 1-to-1, then so be it. You know what I mean? But the second trade, we took another trade, but we took out a previous New York high and the key draws of liquidity at the same level where price dumped at this point. The recap itch shouldn't have taken later in the session, not an A+ setup. Knew this, not good enough confluences, and later in the session where volume drops. So once again, I had this issue, and it's a follow through from last week that I had to cut out from this point, and I think I did. But it's just the itch, bro. I have an itch where sometimes I need to take a trade setup, and I think the thing I need to do, at the parameter I said that I'll share with you guys, parameter, I think it's what it is. Parameter I took was, I think it's after 11:30 a.m. I'm not executing a trade. Like if I took a trade at like, let's say 10 a.m. and it follows through, then that's fine. But I'm not executing a trade after 11:30. Because I looked over my data, a lot of my trades after 11:30 don't smack, bro. They just don't hit for whatever reason. So I think a lot of you guys, if you track your number, the huge thing you guys can do, look over correlations. I think everybody might have different correlations. For you guys, for somebody it might be like they take trades way too fucking early. And it's like, that's not your win spot. Maybe you need to wait a little longer. For me, I've noticed in my data, taking trades later in the session just lowers my probability of success big time. As shown in there, again, that was a break even, that wasn't a loss. But it's just a bad setup. It's like, bro, we're chopping and chopping and chopping. It's just not a good setup, bro. And so that was it. The 5-minute pulled up on the screen. And then that was it. Then Wednesday, one thing I did a test on, I had another itch, once again, of wanting to trade more. And that was trading perhaps Asia session. I've seen a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of people trade Asia session and that it's really profitable. And the reality is, bro, I wouldn't doubt it. I think it could be. But for me, the conclusion I came to, I did a little bit of a testing. And the main test was I wanted to see how volume was compared to New York Open, compared to like Asia session. And I do tend to find that there's a lot of times where Asia has bigger moves and more volume. But at the same time, I also look at New York. I didn't really see that much of a difference, bro. Maybe it was just my results on ES, which is what I trade. But I didn't see that much big of a difference on volume. And so I came to the conclusion, and I think this is more of like a woman in the red dress sort of problem, where you want to test new things, you want to do new things, but just stick to what you're good at, bro. And that's what I kind of stuck at, like reminded myself was like, but you don't even have a year under your belt under New York session. Like master that shit. You know, spend a year at least, bro, and like make sure you know what you're doing instead of looking to trade other sessions and like whatever. So the conclusion I came to was that I don't think it might be a bad decision to trade something like Asia session, but just tunnel vision, bro. Like stick to like the basics, stick to what you know, stick to what you did, and that's what I concluded to. As well as that, I also watched Alex Hermosi's pod with Jack. No, I think it was the Diary of the CEO. Really good podcast as well, bro. All the podcasts I'm mentioning this week, which I think I had a really good pulls this week, were really good that I recommend everybody watches. And that was a really good one by Alex Hermosi. Even though it's nothing related to trading, I think a lot of life aspects can apply. But again, nevertheless, I found it quite entertaining. As I have his books right there. As far as the bias though, high time frame, want to say bearish, but wouldn't be surprised if this is just a deep high time frame retrace. We had a 1 hour gap from yesterday holding and respecting super well. Would be looking to see how price reacts at the open. And then the 1 hour gap from yesterday being respected or broken through could be a key indicator. We had draws of liquidity to both sides. First trade I think was bearish. We took so many draws of liquidity on the way up. We hardly had any deep retraces. We tagged into the 1 hour gap that I spotted at the open. So I didn't really spot this pre-bias, but I spotted it at the open. We inversed on the 1 hour gap and we entered. Quick trade. The target was the 15-minute gap. We had 2 contracts, 10-point stop loss. Accidentally undersized. This was a little bit frustrating as well. Compared to my risk management strategy, we just undersized. I was executing fast when realized that we tagged into the 1 hour gap. Meant 4 contracts instead of 2. Is what it is. The thoughts were break even was early at the 2-minute gap due to the bullish high time frame. So high time frame we were still bullish. So this was generally in my case was a quick scalp. And the intention was, like I said, quick scalp. Recap, we had a good awareness to spot the 1 hour gap. Again, a lesson here that you guys can take away is not only being subjected to what you see pre-market open at the bias, you might spot shit as market opens, and that's what I did. And the second I spotted that shit, I think I literally had 2 minutes to be able to execute, realize that shit, and capitalized. So I had a good awareness. Sucks in the moment that we didn't go for 4 contracts per my risk management strategy, but seeing this as just field practice for the bigger sizes soon to come. And kind of like I alluded to earlier, that's the goal, bro. I think the goal for any trader, at least for me, the way I look at it, and again, this opinion might change, but the goal for me is like, bro, you want to be able to just size bigger. Like, you just want the same setups. If anything, you want to take less setups as time goes by. But when you take a setup, you're sizing fucking big. And when that shit hits, you reap the rewards. So once again, looked at it as field practice, is what it is. And that was a 155 across 10 accounts. Post session, when I recapped this the following day, we did had a long opportunity after TP. So this was something I could have done. I could have, looking back at it, I could have de-risked. So it could have still ended up being a profitable day. But we did have a long opportunity. So after TP hit at that zone, we tagged into the 15-minute gap and we just couldn't break past it. We just didn't. And as I alluded to earlier, high time frame, we were still extremely bullish. And so the trade there was, looking back, I could have took a setup there, right? We inversed out of that 15-minute gap. We finally inversed on the 1 minute, and we could have just took a quick base hit straight back to that 1 hour gap. And that was, in my eyes, a high probability setup. And that was a recap. And I'm pretty sure that was before 11:30. So we would have been able to done that. But I'll put up a picture of the 5 minute. And so that was that. Going into Thursday, low-key a motivating Thursday. One thing I've done, a huge guy that you guys, if you guys want to get motivated by properties and money, I've been starting to watch a guy called Dylan Ferguson. He's an agent in Dubai. And I was watching this vlog where he was touring this property, or he was like going over some listings, like going over plans. Genuinely, bro, there is so much fucking money, bro. There is just, I look at videos like that, bro, and I'll go over what I saw. But he went over a listing, like a project where it had 24 properties. It was select only. So no matter if you have the fucking money and you say, I have the money, let me buy this shit, it's still select only. It was 24 properties on a little island in Dubai. It was 170 million dirhams to 220. Just to put that in reference in US dollars, because that's the main currency I like to go buy things. That's 50-60 mil, bro. 50-60 mil for a house US. And they had NDA signed from who's on there. But the guy said there was 2 Real Madrid players on that plot who've already bought their properties. It's ready to launch. And I looked at that, I'm like, low-key, there is so much fucking money, bro. Like, that's low-key the goal, bro. Imagine you're fucking on a property with 24, secluded, it's private, there isn't much things, it's just you and your fucking neighbors. I guarantee you every one of those people is probably a 9-figure millionaire, minimum. And as included, 2 Real Madrid players. Like, imagine you fucking go out for a little walk, you see Vinny Jr. walking in the street, bro. Like, bro, what? And so it opened my perspective of, like, again, low-key the goal is go big or go home. I think I look at those videos, and I think anybody could be different. You know, for me, a large part for me, it's cars. I like cars. Because I look at cars and I'm like, that's 450, that's 600K, that's X amount. And you have motherfuckers spending that on a fucking wheel. Like, bro, and then houses, what I've started to do recently is even crazier, bro. 50-60 mil, just like that, bro. Crazy work. And so I put here, again, the goal for me, at least in my life, is go big or go home, bro. I'd rather just get it all and shoot for it all than not go for it all. Real shit, bro. But the bias, as Thursday went, high time frame, we were bearish. We had a 1 hour gap that was holding strong, that was broken through and turned into a 1 hour BPR gap. We took out a very key draws of liquidity pre-market. We removed from the chart so it looks clean, but we left the 4 hour gap on the chart. Price was approaching it, would ideally look for a retrace into the 1 hour gap of some sort, and then likely look for shorts. And so I think that ended up kind of similarly being the case, but bearish. We tagged into the 30 minute, we pulled back, we inversed on the 1 minute, and we entered. 3 contracts, and that was a break even. So not the best A plus setup, but I put here basic trade once again. Had that feeling of 1-to-1 not being enough. Would have preferred a trade from the high time frame PDRA or at the 30-minute at the open, but we executed well, good break-even decision. Not my usual A plus setup. And I think a second trade was, this was our L day. It was on Thursday, but we tagged into the 50-minute gap. We swept a relative high. We inversed the 30-second. We target was the key draw of liquidity that just about didn't get swept, and in that 4-hour gap zone. So we entered, and then that didn't hit. That was a stop loss. Kind of sucked, but part of the game. Recap: the better entry was earlier. Moves had already been made, and the key draw of liquidity had, for the most part, had already been swept. So I'm going to attach the screenshot for the recap trade. That was my winning trade. I think, let me see here, was at that circle. So I think after I took that break even, for some reason, I got off the charts, bro. I just thought it was a little bit of a choppiness, but I think at that recap picture, what ended up happening was there was a quick move up, and then there was just a massive inverse for value gap there. And I think that was the trade right there to be executed. And I think that would have been valid. And I think you could have just targeted that shit all the way back down to that 4-hour gap and just trailed that stop. And I think that was the winner entry. Whereas if you look at where I entered, for the most part, just before I entered, the move had already been made. Like a lot of the liquidity had just been swept. And then I was, I guess, looking for some sort of continuation, but it was just way too late, bro. Too fucking late. As I put in the black circle, that was the entry. And there was an inverse there, and that's what I should have done. But the third trade, we tagged into the 30-minute inverse on the 30-second. Not a good trade. And so I think that one didn't hit. And then this was my recap for my parameters. After 11:30, moving forward, no trades to be executed. Like I said, that's for me. That's what works for me. I just noticed volume, at least on New York Open, completely drops. Fuck that shit, bro. 11:30, we're off the charts no matter what. And so post-session, could have entered at the open, at the 30-minute gap as well. That could have been another option. But the reason I didn't was we had London low and the 1-hour BPR, that 1-hour BPR right above. So that I thought that would have been tagged. If that would have been tagged, I would have entered, but it didn't. So as far as that, another reflection I also had was enjoy these days, bro. One day, these will be the good old days. I don't know where I got this from, but it's so true, bro. And I think it's from Tate actually. But it's the concept of getting rich, bro. Like I think a lot of us watching this, and I'm gonna speak for myself here. I'm young, bro. I want to get rich. I want to get money. I want to live all these things. But I think one thing I learned from Tate was being rich, like being on the yachts, having the cars, having the houses, having the life, all these different things don't mean shit without the comparison. And what I mean by that is if you don't have anything to compare to it from when you didn't have the cars, when you couldn't have been on the yachts, when you didn't eat the 5-star restaurants that you wanted to, when you were at the bottom, bro, when you were at the toughest phase, when you were going for your toughest journeys, that's what makes the good times the good times. And I'll put this into context. Like imagine if you were just raised in a billionaire family, bro. Everything's been given to you. You know, you've already got a plan. You've got a trust. The plan is for you to execute, to take over the company, whatever the case is. You have no dopamine left to go up. It's your fucking baseline. But a lot of us, and the way I look at it is, if that's not you, and it's like you're going through a tough journey, like myself, you're trying to make shit work. And I've been doing this for years, bro, trying to make shit work. And you're not living the life that you want to live. Then I look at that as just the longer it goes, the better, bro. You know, enjoy these days because again, these days will be the comparison that you make from when you make it. And for somebody like myself, again, I'll speak for myself, but I have a certain, I can't describe it. I think I said in the prior episode that it's delusion, but I think a better word for that is just certainty. I just know I'm going to be successful. The question for me is when, and fuck, I want to do that shit now. That's the two things I go through in my head is when is it going to happen, and I want it to be now. And so it's not even a question of will you be successful. It's like, bro, of course I am, bro. And when I have that mindset, what I need to understand is like, yo, bro, enjoy these days, bro. Even if they're not enjoyable, you know, the tougher they are, the more shit doesn't go your way. Enjoy that shit because again, the way I looked at it is that's going to be the comparison. When you make that shit, when you have everything you wanted to achieve, the only thing you're going to be looking at is the days when you didn't have that shit. And so that was that. On Friday as well, a really good podcast I also watched was Jet Phrasen with Jack Neal. Another really good podcast. I don't want to talk about too much. We've already talked about so many podcasts already. But that was that. I didn't have, obviously the trade on Friday. Let me pull it up here. The bias was a bit of a choppy past 24 hours. Again, another mixed high time frame. A new 1 hour gap formed above that has yet to be broken through. We had draws of liquidity to both sides, currently also approaching a 1 hour gap. Will be interesting to see if retraces or it breaks through. Staying open-minded. First trade was bearish. Yeah, I think we only took one trade on a Friday. We had a lot of buy-side liquidity built up below. I think that's what it's called when you have a lot of liquidity to the downside. Could be wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong if anybody notices that. That built up below. But we had a 1 hour gap that had not been respected as much. We had a 1 hour gap that wasn't respected as much, but did respect the 30 minute. We inversed off the 30 second. We entered 2 contracts. Thoughts were a really good trade. So thoughts were it was a late fill. It was quite annoying. When I hit the market order, I would prefer to be filled a little bit higher, but it is what it is. But the lesson here was, and for a second I had hesitated on entering, but remembered the lesson on better to get a late fill with a higher stop loss than optimize for a perfect entry. I think a couple episodes ago, and this is really good, and I was really proud of myself on that trade, because it was a perfect case study of proactive application. Saying that, okay, this is a lesson I took away, let me apply that shit. And so a couple episodes ago, I don't know when it was, but I think I made this mistake multiple times. I wouldn't enter trades because it wasn't the perfect entry. And the reason I wouldn't is because I was like, in my head, well, that means I'm going to have a higher stop loss. And then if I want to have a higher stop loss, then I'm going to have to de-risk with less contracts. And so in that case, I learned that lesson. I'm like, okay, not ideal, let's enter. It's a good setup. And so I did. And so I had a very high stop loss. I had to de-risk my contracts so I keep up with my risk management strategy. And we hit that shit. And if we had in my brain, wanted to have a perfect entry, I would have missed the fucking setup. So that was that. And recap, W trades for 3s and above. And that was a good way to end the week. Post session. Also, one thing I've been doing, I've been watching TGR Island, bro. A lot of traders might be watching that shit. That's generally super interesting. After trading, it's one thing I've been doing. Obviously, I'm not doing that shit mid-market open, bro. I'm trading and then I might watch a little bit after. But we wrapped up the Jet Phrasen podcast with Jack Neal. I had still left to finish through. And then another reflection I had is I'm going to be starting to post the trades on my IG weekly. Whenever I'm going to start posting my trades on IG starting from Monday. I just felt like I want to. Because one of the takeaways from Jet Phrasen and the Jack Neal podcast, the reason I actually did that was Jet Phrasen was always talking about like, bro, you need to have more of a productive mindset of a creation rather than consuming. So in anything that you do, ideally you want to be able to create more instead of consuming. And for me, content is just an aspect of creating, but there's so many more vectors to creating. I mean, I'm going to be starting a couple new things going into next week as well, which I'll document as time goes by and talk about. But Saturday, when I was doing my weekly review, for the most part, really good setups. I mean, as I went over a couple of the trades this week, we definitely had some setups that we could have done better. I think I had 2 main recaps, I think on Thursday and I think it was on Tuesday or some shit. But that was that. But for the most part, really good setups. But the reflection I had was my sizing. So now that, again, I had the intention of this week being more like sizing less, getting the reps in, as I mentioned at the start. 2 things we are going to be going into next week with. Number 1, implement multipliers into the risk management strategy. So my strategy for my risk management is really simple. And for the most part, that's what it's being for now. That might change, I don't know. But it's pretty much, I divide my drawdown by 10. So on my accounts, I have a $2,000 drawdown. I divide that by 10. And that's what I'm trading. So my base risk would be that. So in that case, it would be $200 risked on the table. Now, what I mean by implement multipliers into risk management is the higher conviction I have, the higher that I feel like it has the probability of hitting, the more of an A++ setup it is, I will be implementing multipliers. So the multipliers I'll be going with is a 1.5x and a 2x. So for reference, I think if I was to go for a $200 risk, 1.5x would roughly be like 300, and then 2x would be 400 risked. So I'm going to be implementing that. That's just more of a dial to start slowly but surely risking more. And then second parameter I'm going to do, and I'm going to start testing with, is a shorter stop loss, because that allows me to put more contracts. So with a shorter stop loss, I'm risking less on the table. So it gives me the room to be able to put even more contracts on the table while still risking the same amount than if it was a higher stop loss. So I'm going to put up a screenshot of what I meant by this, but it was on Thursday. This was textbook. And that trade on Thursday was probably the best setup of the fucking week. And on a trade like that, number one, I could have put a lower stop loss, even just a little bit above that. From what I can remember, it was a 1 hour gap. I could have had the stop loss a little bit lower. I could have sized more contracts, and they would have been able to give me the room to be able to place more and risk more dollars on the table. So that's a perfect setup. What I meant by like a lower stop loss is that it can give you more room to put more contracts. So that's my two variables that I'm going to be applying into my sizing. And that's going to be more of the focus going into next week. Same shit, same mindset, same way that we've been going about trades and executing trades, just at this point, slowly but surely ramping up the dial and just sizing bigger. And that's essentially it, bro. So aside from that, boys, that's that, bro. I mean, let me know how you guys are finding this series. As always, always let me know what I can do better. Again, we're on episode 16. I don't know when this challenge is going to end, but as this continues to go through, I always want to make sure I can improve. So if there's any suggestions, any recommendations, any things that you guys want to see, let me know. But aside from that as well, another update. Like I said earlier, I will be posting my trades on IG on Monday, starting from Monday. So as of tomorrow. So if you guys want, you guys can follow my IG if you guys want to see that. But regardless, every week on YouTube, nothing changes. We'll be going over all of the trades, all of the week, all of the things I've learned. And yeah, I think the really good way to describe this week was just a step in the right direction, bro. It's just consistency. Compounding that shit, bro. Doing the same shit, repetition. And soon enough, that shit's going to be a hit, bro. 100K months is close. I feel it, bro. So, aside from that, hope you guys had a good week. Hope you guys have another good week going into next week. Aside from that, keep fucking crushing.